Hello guys, in this lecture we are going to start discussing about nephritic syndrome. Okay, so what is nephritic syndrome? Nephritic syndrome is basically an inflammation of the glomerulus. Okay, this is an inflammation of the glomerulus and it's characterized by classic symptoms of nephritic syndrome. What do we have classic symptoms of nephritic syndrome? Firstly, we have hematuria. Hematuria can be gross, either there is frank blood coming from the urine or it could be microscopic. When it is microscopic, we can only see it through the light microscope, and through the urine examination, you can also see casts, RBC casts in the urine. So this is one classic clinical manifestation of nephritic syndrome. The second one what we have is the proteinuria. So what is proteinuria? Proteinuria is basically proteins are present in the urine. So this proteinuria is subnephrotic range. So in nephrotic syndrome we have more than 3.5 grams per day of proteinuria, but in the nephritic syndrome we have subnephrotic range, that is less than 3.5 gram. Generally it will be up to 1 gram per day. So it can be with or without edema, and edema is also a classic feature of the nephrotic syndrome. The third feature is we have azotemia. What is azotemia? It is elevated blood urine nitrogen and create levels, and whenever there is clinical manifestations along with azotemia, we call it as uremia. Okay, this is mainly because of the reduced GFR. The one more symptom that we have in nephritic syndrome is known as the hypertension. So hypertension can be either due to fluid retention or it can also be due to renin release from the ischemic kidney. So hypertension is another classic feature of the nephritic syndrome. So what are the four classical symptoms of the nephritic syndrome? We have hematuria, proteinuria, azotemia along with hypertension. So what generally happens in the nephritic syndrome is there is proliferation of cells within the glomeruli, and this proliferation of cells will lead to, along with that, we also have the proliferation of leukocytes and its infiltration into the glomerulus. This leads to injury of the capillary walls, and this injury leads to permits the blood and other proteins to pass into the urine. So after permitting blood and proteins to pass into the urine, there are hemodynamic changes that ultimately lead to reduced or decreased GFR. So this is the basic pathophysiology of nephritic syndrome. So there is a proliferation of cells within the glomeruli. Along with that, we also have leukocytic infiltration. This leads to injury of the capillary walls, permitting blood and other proteins to pass into the urine, ultimately leading to hemodynamic changes that lead to reduced GFR. And this reduced GFR will lead to azotemia, and because of loss of proteins, we have proteinuria, loss of blood cells, we have hematuria, and because of both of these mechanisms, we have hypertension in the nephrotic syndrome. So clinically, we have oliguria, there is very little urine flow, there is fluid retention leading to hypertension, there is azotemia followed by the hypertension. So what are the main two types of nephritic syndrome? We have two types. First one is called as the PSGN, that is post streptococcal glomerulonephritis. It is also called as the acute proliferative glomerulonephritis, post infectious or infection associated. The second one is called as the RPGN, that is rapidly progressive glomerulonephritis. Okay, we are going to discuss these two. Beginning with the post streptococcal glomerulonephritis. So this appears 1 to 4 weeks after the streptococcal infection. So whenever there is streptococcal infection of the pharynx, larynx or respiratory tract, so the child usually recovers within 1 or 2 weeks, and after some 2 to 4 weeks, the post streptococcal glomerulonephritis appears because of post infection of the pharynx, larynx or even the skin. We call it as impetigo. This is due to streptococcal infection. It usually affects children in the age range of 6 to 10 years, and they are the most common. So what is the pathogenesis? Here we have the deposition of the immune complexes. So immune complexes are formed, and these immune complexes are between an antigen and our antibody. Antigen antibody complex is known as immune complex. So what is antigen? Antigen is from the group A beta hemolytic streptococci. Antigen is from the group A beta hemolytic streptococci, and that antigen is the streptococcal pyogenic exotoxin B, that is known as SPE-B. Streptococcal pyogenic exotoxin B. So this antigen will bind with the antibodies, and for this also there is molecular mimicry in the PSGN. What is the molecular mimicry? The protein is called as the M protein or subtypes of 1241. So 1241 subtypes of M protein that will cross react with our antibodies. So this is the molecular mimicry seen in the post streptococcal glomerulonephritis. So these immune complexes will come and deposit in the kidney. On electron microscope, what do we have? We have something called as the subepithelial deposits or hump-like deposits. Okay, on electron microscope, there are subepithelial deposits of these immune complexes in the PSGN. So on immunofluorescence, what do we have? On immunofluorescence, we can see granular deposits of IgG, complement 3 and IgM in the mesangium as well as along the glomerular basement membrane. So immunofluorescence, we have granular deposits of IgG, complement 3, IgM in the mesangium and along with the glomerular basement membrane. On electron microscope, we have subepithelial hump-like deposits. So these two are important questions. Okay, deposits of IgG, complement 3 IgM in the mesangium and glomerular basement membrane, and on electron microscope you have subepithelial hump-like deposits. So what are the other causes of PSGN? Sometimes you might just say that PSGN is due to post-streptococcal infection of pharynx or larynx. No, it can also occur in case of staphylococcal endocarditis. It can also occur in pneumococcal pneumonia, meningococcemia, as well as some of the viral infections associated such as the hepatitis B, hepatitis C, HIV. We can also have varicella, mumps, infectious mononucleosis. So these are the other causes of PSGN. In terms of parasitic infections, we have malaria as well as toxoplasmosis. So you cannot just say that it is due to the post-streptococcal infection of the pharynx or larynx. It can also be due to staphylococcal endocarditis, pneumococcal pneumonia, meningococcemia, and also viral infections such as hepatitis B, hepatitis C, HIV, varicella, mumps, infectious mononucleosis, and some of the parasitic infections such as malaria and toxoplasmosis. So moving on to the clinical features of the post-streptococcal glomerulonephritis. So in the children, generally affects the young child between 6 to 10 years, as I just told you. They present with malaise, that is fatigability. There is fever, nausea, along with oliguria and hematuria. So this hematuria can be something called as a smoky or cola colored urine. There is red color urine from the child, so that is known as the cola colored urine or smoky urine. This is the general history is usually after 1 to 2 weeks of recovery from the sore throat. So this is the classic symptom that the patient presents with. Along with that, as I just told you, when you do the urine routine, you can see dysmorphic hybrices, RBCs, and also casts in the urine. There is mild proteinuria of almost less than 1 gram per day, which is in the subnephrotic range. The child can be associated with periorbital edema. It is due to hypoalbuminemia because of proteinuria. Albumin is lost in the urine, so there is hypoalbuminemia. That leads to reduced oncotic pressure and leading to periorbital edema and generalized edema, that is known as anasarca. There will also be mild to moderate hypertension, which might or might not be a feature of nephrotic syndrome, but this is a classic hypertension seen in the nephritic syndrome. Even in the children, we can say hypertension. So when it comes to adults, when adults suffer with a nephritic syndrome, there is sudden appearance of hypertension along with the edema, and there is also the reduced incidence of nephritic syndrome in the adults. And in adults, we can see sudden appearance of hypertension and edema with or without increased in the blood urine nitrogen, that is azotemia. So generally, the classic lab titers that we see is when you do the lab diagnosis, there is elevated ASO titers. What is ASO? Anti-streptolysin O titers. Anti-streptolysin O titers are very, very elevated, and there is reduced complement 3 levels because complement 3 are getting deposited in the glomerular mesangium and basement membrane. So there is reduced complement 3 levels in the blood. So what happens in the end? In the end, 90% of the patients of PSGN usually recover. We just have to give symptomatic treatment, reduce the hypertension, reduce the edema, and very rarely 1% of the patients will progress to RPGN. RPGN, what is called as the rapidly progressive glomerulonephritis. So in the next lecture, we are going to discuss about the rapidly progressive glomerulonephritis. Alright. So moving on to the rapidly progressive glomerulonephritis. This is defined as the severe glomerular injury. Okay, this is severe glomerular injury which is associated with the rapid and progressive loss of renal function. So rapidly progressive glomerulonephritis is defined as the severe glomerular injury which is associated with the rapid and progressive loss of the renal function. The characteristic feature of RPGN is there is severe oliguria as well as renal failure. There is severe oliguria with renal failure. This is the classic feature of RPGN. And if you leave this RPGN untreated, there will be death of the patient within weeks to months. So this is a very serious condition. In the glomeruli, we usually see the presence of the crescents formation in the glomeruli. We are going to see in detail how the crescents are formed. So the classic representation of the RPGN is crescent formation in most of the glomeruli. That's why this RPGN is also called as the crescentic glomerulonephritis. So what are the different types of RPGN we have? This is a very important table to understand the rapidly progressive glomerulonephritis. We have something called as the type 1 followed by type 2 as well as type 3. So what happens in the type 1? In the type 1, there is anti-glomerular basement membrane antibody formation. So there is anti-glomerular basement membrane antibody formation. Sometimes it might be limited to the kidney And these antiglomerular basement membrane formation, antiglomerular basement membrane antibodies, these antibodies cross react with alpha 3 chain of the collagen 4 of the glomerular basement membrane, alpha 3 chain of the collagen 4 of the glomerular basement membrane. And the same, because of the molecular mimicry, the same collagen is also present in the pulmonary alveolar basement membrane. So when these antibodies cross react with those pulmonary alveolar basement membrane, this leads to something called as the good posture syndrome. What is good posture syndrome? Because of this cross reaction, because of these antibodies acting in the pulmonary alveolar hemorrhages, pulmonary alveolar basement membrane, this leads to pulmonary hemorrhages as well as recurrent hemoptysis. So that is the basic of the type 1. In type 2, type 2 is basically idiopathic. We can say there are no antiglomerular basement membrane antibodies here. So this type 2 RPGN is classically seen in the post-streptococcal glomerular nephritis moving into RPGN, or the post lupus nephritis, you can say, or HSP. What is HSP? Henoch-Nolan purpura. We are going to have a separate discussion on that as well. We can also see following the IgA nephropathy leading to type 2 RPGN. The type 3 type of RPGN is something known as the posse-immune type, and this is generally associated with ANCA association. It can also be idiopathic. So this ANCA association is also seen in the venous granulomatosis as well as the microscopic phalangitis. So out of the total 100 patients of the RPGN, almost 20% will have the type 1 type of RPGN, 25% will have type 2, and remaining 55% will have a type 3 RPGN type. So what happens in the type 1? As I just told you, there are formation of the autoantibodies against the alpha 3 chain of the type 4 collagen of the glomerular basement membrane. So when this happens, there is proliferation of epithelial cells in the lining the Bowman capsule, and this leads to infiltration of monocytes and macrophages. And ultimately this leads to linear deposits of IgG and complement 3 in the glomerular basement membrane. So this is the basic pathophysiology of type 1 of RPGN. What do we have? We have the formation of autoantibodies against alpha 3 chain of the type 4 collagen of the glomerular basement membrane. This leads to proliferation of the epithelial cells lining the Bowman's capsule, leading to infiltration of monocytes and macrophages, and finally the linear deposits of IgG and complement 3 in the glomerular basement membrane. So what is good posture syndrome? As I just told you, how is it related to the RPGN? So when these glomerular basement membrane antibodies, they cross react with the pulmonary alveolar basement membrane. And remember, glomerular basement membrane as well as the pulmonary alveolar basement membrane, they both have the same type, that is alpha 3 chain of the collagen type 4. When these antibodies cross react, the pulmonary symptoms that patient suffers with is pulmonary hemorrhage leading to recurrent hemoptysis. Along with that, the previous kidney injury, he can also have renal failure. So classic symptom is recurrent hemoptysis with pulmonary hemorrhage, and also the patient suffers from kidney renal failure should give you a hint that the patient is suffering from RPGN. And this genetically it is associated with HLA-DR-B1, this syndrome. So type 2, as I just told you, it's because of deposition of immune complexes, and immune complex formation is seen in, as I just told you, these 3 PSGN, that is the post-streptococcal glomerular nephritis, where immune complexes are formed, and also lupus, systemic lupus leading to kidney injury, Henoch-Nolan purpura, and as well as IgA nephropathy. So that is the type 2. Type 3 posse-immune, as I just told you, there is in the type 3 posse-immune type, there is lack of detectable antibodies. There are no anti-GBM antibodies. There are no detectable immune complexes formation. So what is this posse-immune? In the posse-immune, it's generally found that in the posse-immune, in blood, we can find the ANCAs. What is ANCAs? Anti-neutrophil cytoplasmic antibodies. So in the posse-immune type of RPGN, most patients of this type of RPGN have circulating anti-neutrophil cytoplasmic antibodies known as ANCAs. We have 2 types, that is P-ANCA and C-ANCA. Earlier they used to be called as P-ANCA, what is perinuclear ANCA, and C-ANCA, that is cytoplasmic ANCA. Nowadays P-ANCA is called as the MPO ANCA, that is myeloperoxidase ANCA, and also C-ANCA is called as PR3 ANCA, that is proteinase 3 ANCA. Okay, in RPGN, what will be the morphology of the kidney? The kidney will be generally enlarged and pale, and there will be petechial hemorrhages on the cortical surface. So the kidneys are generally enlarged and pale, and the petechial hemorrhages will be seen on the cortical surface. This is the morphology of kidney in the RPGN. On light microscope, we can see focal and segmental necrosis of the glomerulus. There will be distinct crescent formation in the glomerulus, as well as we can also see proliferation of the glomerular epithelial cells along with monocytes and macrophages. This is the appearance of the light microscope. On immunofluorescence, we can see linear GBM, IgG, and C3 deposits on the glomerular basement membrane. That is the type 2. In electron microscope, we can also see a proper rupture in the glomerular basement membrane, leading to the leakage of all the proteins, blood cells, and everything. So clinical features, common clinical features of the RPGN, that is rapidly progressive glomerulonephritis. It is similar to the nephritic syndrome. The patient suffers with hematuria with RBC cast in the urine. There is moderate proteinuria reaching nephrotic range, and there is also hypertension as well as edema for the patient. If the patient has autoreaction with the pulmonary, we can call it as good posture syndrome, where the patient suffers from recurrent hematopoiesis as well as the recurrent pulmonary hemorrhages. Specific lab diagnosis for the RPGN is we can also find something called as anti-glomerular basement membrane antibodies. If it is type 1, we can see anti-nuclear antibodies as well. And if this positive immune time, we can find P ANCA and C ANCA in the blood. So management, we can do plasmapheresis, that is plasma exchange. We can remove all those antibodies from the plasma and give back the plasma back to the patient. We can put them on steroids. Steroids will suppress the immunity, so antibodies will be suppressed. Or we can also give immunosuppressants to the patient so that antibodies are not found. When the patient goes into RPGN, there is a very few patients who recover, and most of the patients will progress, leading to further kidney damage. Finally, the patients will have to undergo chronic dialysis for the rest of their years, or the definitive will be the transplantation, where it cannot be guaranteed because those antibodies can also react with the new kidney, so it can also fail again. So this is the recovery for the patient suffering from the RPGN. So finally, ending lecture with the thought for the day. So what is the thought for today? You don't want to look back and know that you could have done better. So whatever you're doing right now, studying, everything is peaceful and everything is better. So sometimes whatever you do, you don't want to look back in the future and know that yes, I could have studied something, I could have done that day. So you don't want to regret that. So thought for the day is, you don't want to look back and know that you could have done better. So do your best every day from today. Thank you guys.